folks, and welcome to this week's show. And this week's show, we're focusing on the albums of Roxy Music, studio albums only. Today, we've got special guests. We've got Ian back again.
Hello. And
our new guest and first non-Geordie on the show, we've got Peter.
Hello.
So before we stop, just want to sort of discuss how or when we got into Roxy Music, sort of just general thoughts. Ian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, during the 80s, but it was all their 80s out, all their 80s stuff, you know. So I never really knew Roxy Music as such then, and I think it was when I joined your band, Neil gave us the greatest hits, which was basically I think the first five albums.
It was the one that was released in '77, and I think it had about 8 tracks on it or something.
Yeah. And you know, some of those tracks took me a long time to get into, like, but there were certain ones like "Love Is the Drug" that straight away I thought, oh, that's brilliant, like, you know. So I started off with the later stuff, but then worked my way back to the early stuff and never looked back, really.
Yeah. Peter?
I think I came to them, obviously I heard the singles in the 80s, you know, more than this and that sort of stuff, and I wasn't sold. But then I read a Susie interview, Susie and the Banshees, and, you know, she was talking about Roxy Music, and then it came up in other things, and I'm like, okay, there must be more to this band. And so I went back and I started at the other end. I started at the beginning and worked my way forward. And yeah, by the time I got to sort of For Your Pleasure, the minute I heard "In Every Dream Home My Heartache," I'm like, well, that's the end. Boom, done. That's it. You know, I am signed up. There's some real effort going into this. Yeah, so I guess that would have been sort of 86, 87, yeah, just after I left school, as I was starting to sort of, you know, explore other music.
Yeah, mine was probably 79. My dad's partner at the time got the Manifesto album, and I remember playing, hearing Dance Away for the first time and just thought it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I remember hearing the album, thinking it was a bit weird, a little bit odd. But that was probably the first time I really got into them, although I was aware of Virginia Plain. It was just one of them songs that you sort of knew. And Love Is the Drug you knew because it was just, you know, it was played quite regularly on the radio. But nothing up to that point. You know, obviously you knew Let's Stick Together. I knew the In Crowd, funnily enough, really quite well. It's one of those songs that I just knew and really liked, and again, thought was odd because the guitar solo was absolutely insane at the end, you know. And it's basically Roxy. It's literally the whole band playing as a backing band for Ferry on the solo album. So that was really what got me into them. And then it was like, as you, same with you, in the 80s, we started the band. And I think it's the same album that Neil lent us was that sort of greatest hits thing. It was a tape. I remember rightly.
I was playing sax and I was looking to try and get some influences, you know. So Andy Mackay was someone I kind of grabbed hold of, and I loved his style, and it was exactly what I was looking to play like, you know.
So yeah, I mean, it was. I think it was that greatest hits for me as well. I'd heard Avalon as well, which I quite liked at the time, and then obviously went backwards, watched the old Grey Whistle test clips that kept coming on of the early stuff, like when they did Ladytron and that, and just thought, wow, that's magic. And then got into the albums that way and went, probably like yourself, Peter, went in chronological order and went through it that way. Yeah. So for me, I'm going to be open and dead and say this straight away on the show. Roxy Music are in my top 10 artists of all time. So my rankings already, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, are really high. So just the way I see it. And for once, I'm going to kick off the show. So we're going to focus on the 8 studio albums. So on the screen, folks, as you can see, I've put the rankings for each for the albums. 5 stars being a masterpiece, 4.5 essential, 4 excellent, 3.5 very good, 3 good, 2.5 fair, 2 weak, 1.5 very poor, 1 awful. I mean, dear me, and 0.5, don't bother. We've not reached 0.5 yet, but we have reached 1, which we've mentioned on other shows. So there's the rankings, and as I've said before, there already, nothing gets less than excellent off me with regards to Roxy. It's just they're one of my favorite bands. And I'm going to stop the show. And in at number 8, I've got Siren, released in 75. It's got Jerry Hallline on the rocks off the coast of Anglesey. Chris Thomas is back producing the album. It's a very good album, 4 stars all the way. I just think it's top heavy as an album. I think the first half is terrific, absolutely fabulous. Love is the Drug. We all know the song. It's a great opener. I mean, it's so clever with that little bass line and the sax, the walking on the gravel, and then the car door slamming, and then Paul Thompson rocking in on the drums. It's fantastic tune. It's one of the most covered songs. If you go to pubs and watch bands play, most of them always end up doing Love is the Drug.
It's one of the greatest songs, isn't it?
It is, yes, without a doubt, without an absolute doubt. I've written other things that I really like. End of the Line's a terrific tune. Sentimental Fool is one of my favorite Roxy music songs. It's got that old school Roxy experimental vibe at the beginning, you know, with that heavy guitar thing that he's got. I think he's using like a bizarre, the pedal, I'm sure it's called a Big Muff. Yes, that's the real name. And he's got this real heavy drive on it, just single notes. It's over, you know, feeding back a little bit. It's superb. It's got a real feel, and it's got those little keys going on with the Fender Rhodes up style. Oh, it's brilliant. And then Ferry's voice when he comes in with "Surely You Can't Be Leading Me On," it's just magnificent. Whirlwind, I've just got written, it's aggressive. Mad bass line by John Gustafson. This would be his last album with Roxy. Ferocious drumming by Paul Thompson. It's just brilliant. And then She Sells, you know, is very, very good on the next side. Could It Happen to Me? Not bad. Both Ends Burning, I've got written as a masterpiece. Great percussion, great guitar. The album falters a little bit. Nightingale's a good song, and Just Another High's good. But the second side for me is definitely just slightly weaker. But it's still an excellent album. It's still excellent. I like the production on it, but for me, because of the quality of the albums, 4 stars would win for some bands, but it comes in at number 8 for me. Ian, what have you got in at number 8?
Number 8, I've gone for this. I thought this would be your number 8, but not. I've gone for Flesh and Blood. This was the point after the likes of Paul Thompson had left, and then they were going for more and more commercially sounding songs. The songwriting started to go more for style over content, I think. Less lyrics, you know, you go through the lyric sheets and there's not a lot of lyrics to quite a lot of the songs, and that would continue on to the Avalon especially. But having said that, there's some brilliant songs on it. Are particularly, I mean, there's 2 covers on this album, which is very unusual. Well, it's just not Roxy music. They don't do covers, you know. 2 covers on this album. It's probably one of the reasons why it's in at number 8. But having said that, I love both covers, and especially 8 Miles High
by the Birds.
Superb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the production on the album's great. Sonically, it sounds superb. Most songs anyway. I think by any other band, this would probably be their peak album. It would be just like, oh, you know, it could be their best album. But because Roxy Music's got such a strong catalogue, it's in last place. I think pop wise, Oh Yeah and Over You are easy to get into, you know, for the general public. Easy to get into Roxy music that way. I personally prefer the more a bit more cynical sounding, like Same Old Scene and No Strange Delight. I think there's more to those songs. But I think My Only Love is a superb song, and I don't think the album does it quite justice compared to when they played this live.
Yeah, they stretch out with it, don't they, with the sax solo and all
it's
that.
got such a it's soulful, and then you get like is it Neil Hubbard on guitar doing
Yeah.
these? I think that's absolutely superb, and again, Mackay can take it a bit further with the and build up his solo with that, because it's on the high road, and I think it's absolutely superb song.
Yeah, that's the best version of it, I think, actually.
Yeah, and Running Wild. I know some of the lyrics are a bit cheesy, like, but conversely, the lyrics like burning through my head, it does me in. There's that melody again. You can see him hearing this tune and reminding him of somebody, you know. But I guess it's the when all your dreams come true is a bit cringy, but anyway, I'll forgive it for that. So anyway, I've been a bit harsh with this one, and I've given it 3.5. But I recognise that's probably a bit harsh.
Okay,
This one.
That's interesting. Peter, how about yourself then? What have you got at number 8?
Number 8, I've got Avalon. It just, in fact, nearly my whole list almost goes backwards of the releases. Not quite. The twist for this album is that More Than This is my favourite Roxy single.
Right.
Although I have actually only recently realised quite what the Roxy singles were. Being an albums man, I didn't realise that some of tracks were released as singles. So yeah, I put Avalon in at number 8. More Than This is an absolute fucking belter of a tune. Sorry,
All right.
swearing. Leave that one out. Space Between just really kind of left me cold, and then when it gets to Avalon, the actual track, like you can really see it's pure Ferry in the white jacket. It's so suave. It's a bit like eating a whole cake in one sitting. You know? It's slightly like, Jesus, man, wash it down with something. You know, it's getting. I know I think if you're half cut and feeling a bit loose, then Avalon is the song for you. You know, it's fine at a wedding maybe, but other than that, it's like that skip. And then it does that. The album goes into that India, While My Heart Is Still Beating thing, where it all sort of gets quite kind of instrumental. Like, it feels like they're trying to be like do an art school thing, but not really pulling it off, like the half murmured vocals of While My Heart. You know, it just, I'm like, where are they going with this? It just doesn't feel that much to me. And then Take a Chance With Me. That was, I'm okay with that track. I can, you know, To Turn You On and then True to Life. I'm pairing them together because I think they work together as a pair. Although True to Life has still got that, he's still got the white jacket on. It still feels really suave. I love to Turn You On, and I think if that wasn't before True to Life on the album, I would probably not like True to Life so much, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
They definitely feel like a pair of songs, and you're going on like a little journey with them. And yeah, but I think True to Life on its own wouldn't necessarily stand up because I'm seeing the white jacket. So sort of all in all, I gave the album 3 stars for Avalon.
Still good.
Which is still, yeah. But that's because when it hits hard, you know. Yeah. I mean, 2.5 of the stars go to More Than This.
Right, well, that's interesting. Okay, the orders are going to be totally different, I suspect. My number 7 is Manifesto, which came out in March '79. The album's split in two parts. And again, people forget because of vinyl, and people don't, well, maybe vinyl's come back now, of course, but you had the east side and the west side. And for me, again, it's an album that is literally two halves, where the first half is much stronger than the second half. I think the first half is like 5-star quality, whereas the second half's not. I think it's the band had been split up for 4 years. They'd reformed. You've got Alan Spencer on bass, on the odd track with Gary Tibbs mainly, I believe. And it's the musicianship's really good. Paul Carrick's on keyboards as well. The album starts really well. Manifesto is a great song, lovely groove, fantastic bass line, lovely feel. And then Trash comes in, which is almost like it's like a new romantic song. It's almost like the Manifesto, ironically, for the feel of the new romantic band that would follow. And it was played a lot in the sort of new romantic bars of the time. Great song, although Ferry doesn't like it anymore. It was released as a single, barely touched the charts, but Ferry's gone on record saying he's not a big fan of it very much anymore. Angel Eyes is a great song. I prefer the album version with the driving guitars. The single remix is massively different. All the high vocals. It's great. It's really poppy, but I prefer the guitar heavy version. But it's a great song. Angel Eyes is a great song. Still Falls the Rain, lovely, fabulous singing. Again, lovely groove. Ferry's voice is great on it. And then you flip the album over and you got the weaker side. Ain't That So? It's got a fantastic groove. It starts really well. And then it gets it odd. My Little Girl. I do like it, but I can see why people don't. It always reminds me of like an ABBA album track or a Hot Chocolate single. It just seems odd to be on this album. It's good, but odd. And then Dance Away, which I've mentioned, is one of my favorite ever Roxy songs. I just love it. I think it's great. It's a perfect pop song for me. And when we do the top 10 songs, this might well feature. But then the album peters out with Cry, 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 which I think is just not very good. It should have been removed. And again, Ferry's mentioned it recently, said this album he feels is a bit weak, and he wouldn't have put Cry, Cry, Cry on it, and I agree with him. But I do like Spin Me Round. It's a nice little calm finisher at the end. It's a nice song. I like the album cover as well, with the sort of dummy things on the front, and the party scene going on, and it's very clever, and again, very much of its time. But it just, again, I think it works. I think it works really well. For me, 4 stars. It's an excellent album. It could have been better, but it is an excellent album nonetheless. I just think side 2 is a little bit weaker than side 1. Ian, what have you got next?
So this is number 7. Next, I've got Avalon. I was toying whether to put this at 8 or 7, between Flesh and Blood and Avalon. But this is as commercial as they would go. It was, I guess they would split up and Ferry would go solo, because it really was, I think it was the sound he was searching for. I don't know how long this album took to record and complete, but I think Boys and Girls took an age, and he had so many guest artists on there. He seemed to be recording that for ages. I'm not sure about Avalon, but
well, I would suggest that Boys and Girls should have been a Roxy album, because it's almost like the end of all of that style album, like that style of music, isn't it? It's a great album, actually, and it could have been great with having Mackay and Manzanera on it. I know it's obviously Nile Rodgers is producing it as well. It would have been a great final Roxy album. Go on, sorry.
Oh no. But I think by now the band had to change their style of playing to fit in with the feel of it. It's all about the feel and the atmosphere and the ambience of the album, less about the songs. I mean, I do love the album, but from a point of view to get that certain feel, sometimes you're in the mood for it, other times you're not. But it does have a feel pretty much for the whole album. I think he said it was written about a breakup or something like that. And he was writing it when he was on the Galway coast, which I think a lot of the inspiration to the artwork and everything was from there. Once again, I feel side A is much better than side B. Side B kicks off with the main thing, which I really love. I think that's great, and that was really good live. While My Heart Is Still Beating, you know, I like that, but I can never get over the fact that Careless Whisper basically rips off the sax part, but embellishes it a bit more. And every time I feel like, oh, you know, it's exactly the same. Well, it's not exactly the same, but I just hear that and it kind of spoils it for us because I feel like it's hard done to and not as well known, obviously. But I've got a little note here saying if you go to see them live, and you know this, Sid, you'll go for the toilet break if you're desperate when one of these songs comes on. And you won't be if I was watching Roxy and they didn't do anything off this album, I wouldn't be bothered, you know. If they didn't do Avalon, or if I missed Avalon, I wouldn't be bothered. So maybe I should have had this in 8th. Anyway, I don't want to change now. But having said that, when they were recording, the studio next door, that's when the producer and Ferry heard Yannick Etienne singing, and they just dragged her in by chance. And I think her singing, her background vocals on Avalon are just absolutely superb. You know,
yeah,
a bit like you know, the background vocals on the Pink Floyd. Is it The Great Gig in the Sky or something like that? Similar kind. You know, they really add to the song, and it would not be the same song without that. So, unfortunately, I read that she just died this March. And,
right, okay.
I didn't know that. And Tara or Tara is a good way of saying it off, like, you know.
He called his kid Tara, didn't he, as well?
Did he?
Yeah, one of his sons is called Tara, obviously based on the song.
Aye, because that's at the end of
yeah, right at the end of the album.
For Your Pleasure, for Your
yeah,
Pleasure.
Oh yes,
well,
yes,
isn't it?
Tara.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've given it 4 stars. It might be a bit harsh, but it grabbed me as an album before any of the other ones did, but I'm less keen on it now.
Okay, right. Peter?
I'm the same as you. I've got Manifesto in at number 7. I'm fairly happy with the opening track. That was good for me. And then Trash, which, as you rightly said, you know, was kind of the theme for the New Romantics, and a lot of people love. I just don't get it. It's like fingernails down a blackboard for me.
Right.
Although, like, it's got the elements of a song that I would love. It just doesn't kind of come together for me. The singles Angel Eyes and Dance Away off this album are absolute stone cold classics. Still Falls the Rain, completely love that. But then Ain't That So, it's just, again, like yourself, it's the second side of the album. Ain't That So, My Little Girl, Cry, 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 that is just leaving me flat. Just not a lot.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, there are certain songs where Ferry'd released the solo album the year before, and if he'd actually put a couple of those tracks onto this album, it could have been absolutely unbelievable, you know. Can't Let Go, for example, would have been great on this album, and the Bright Strip Bear, you know, it's you know,
it was obviously
from Bright Strip Bear, yeah.
What he was doing at that time. So, but it does close with Spin Me Round.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's all of their albums do seem to have a closer track. They like to bring the album to a, you know, gliding finish, and that is no exception. You know, it is. I love that song. It's a great song.
It's lovely, isn't it? It's got just a great groove. I think just like it's really calm, very gentle, but just feels lovely.
I mean, you know, to be honest, even with a song like Trash, which when I think of it as Roxy music, I don't like. I still kind of like it, you know. It's not like I'm rushing to the stereo to turn it off. Yeah. There's only one, which we'll find out that I actually have skipped. So I gave the album 3.5, which sometimes I think is generous, but I don't know. But sometimes I play it and I'm like, yeah, I get where they were going. And other times I'm like, no, this is really wrong. It depends what kind of mood.
Yeah, it's the album I think that's dropped the most for me, actually.
Yeah, it's so Roxy started as, you know, that sort of art school discord. And if you're in the mood for that kind of Roxy music and you accidentally put Manifesto on, you're going to want to rip it off the turntable and fling it against the wall. If you're in the mood for the White Jacket, Louche Ferry, then Manifesto is your album.
Yeah.
So it does kind of depend. And sometimes I am feeling, well, never quite the full White Jacket, but you know.
Yeah, the album does sort of straddle both worlds a little bit, doesn't it? You know, because there are some songs that are art school without a doubt in it, you know. Still Falls the Rain, for example, could have been on any of the earlier albums.
Through the years.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
So yeah, like as we've already said, it is there a bad Roxy album? No. There isn't, you know.
Okay, folks. Well, then we're up to number 6, and my number 6 is Flesh and Blood. I've given it 4.5 stars. This is the album that's really improved the most for me. This 4 weeks ago would have been my number 8, and it's moved up considerably. It's the first album without the great Paul Thompson, who left for musical differences, and I can see why. Because it's, in my opinion, the album opener stinks. I think the Midnight Hour is terrible. It's one of them songs that shouldn't have been on the album, and it really lets the album down for me. It's clearly for me a Ferry solo single, and that would have been great as a solo single, but it's not Roxy music. Doesn't
should
work
have been on his solo album, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it just doesn't work. But then there are some great pop songs which I didn't really used to like. I was never a big fan of Oh Yeah, but I actually really quite like it now, you know. Some of the things have been said before, so I'm not going to go too much into them. I think The Same Old Scene is one of my favorite Roxy songs. I've written, yeah, it's almost a rallying call for the new romantic movement. It sounds like the template for every Duran Duran song that would follow. The bass playing by Alan Spencer is unbelievable. It's absolutely top draw. It's such a well-produced song as well. It's glossy. It's almost like the cover of a magazine, like of like Vogue. It's such a well-produced song. It's got that sort of, it's beautifully done. I think it's a great song, really great pop song. Flesh and Blood, I love it. It sounds like the band Japan, who clearly modelled themselves vocally on Roxy. And I'm a Japan fan, I'll be honest, but you know, Sylvian clearly was a huge Ferry fan, and you can hear this very much on Flesh and Blood on this song. My Only Love, and it's the same as you, I wrote exceptional song, Better Live is what I've written here. It's been cut off a bit in the studio and it spreads its wings when they play it live. 8 Miles High, I've written great cover of the Bird song, and I'm going to see it. It's better than the original. You don't get many better cover versions, but this one is. Rain, 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 I really like. It's cold, it's Newman-esque. It's got that electronica feel to it. No Strange Delight is superb. And the last 2 songs, actually, along with Running Wild, to me, have like a soundtrack feel to them. I mean, Running Wild's like an odd closure. It's they just have that weird, cold, early 80s soundtrack. You can imagine them being in like in a Ridley Scott film or something, you know. They've got that real sort of feel to them. I really, really like them. Really good. I think it's a very, very good album, and could have been a 5 if it didn't have bloody the Midnight Hour. Oh dear, stinks. Well, 4.5 stars. Terrific album in my opinion.
What's your opinion of the title track? It does nothing for me, really.
I really like it. I really, really like it. Yeah, it's got that. It's got that new romantic-y sort of feel to it in some respects. I think that's maybe why it appeals to me so much.
It's not exactly politically correct, is it? You'd nail her if you could.
No. Yeah, but Roxy, some of the Roxy stuff's a bit like that, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, they're not. They wouldn't be doing some of the covers today.
Well, the covers would never be allowed today.
That's a whole other conversation of
yeah.
people cancelled.
Well, the covers will get mentioned later on, actually. So there you have it. What have you got at number 6, Ian?
6, right? I've already said that these next 4, I reckon, you could chop and change them, but I've put Siren in next. I think it's an excellent album, and I think it's a quite an easy album to get into if you don't really know Roxy music. Great collection of songs. I think they mix really well together. The bass is on. You've got John Gustafson, who's my favorite bass player. I know I don't think he was Ferry's favorite bass player, but I think he plays on some of the funkiest, heaviest bass oriented songs like Love Is the Drug, Both Ends Burning, and the drums I think sound superb. Plenty for Paul Thompson to get his teeth into on this album. The mix sounds great. As you mentioned, Sentimental Fool, it's probably the best intro of any song I've ever heard, like, you know. And it continues from the previous song. I forget what that song is. That it's got the like the faraway keyboard wailing sound, and then the keyboards
end of the line.
End of the line. Yeah, I like how it fades from that, and then it comes into Sentimental Fool. But yeah, the opening lyrics, the vocals are fantastic. And that song keeps morphing and changing, and you know, to later on, to the like, a woman in love can make you feel good. That section, the rhythm of love, I think it's a brilliant song. It's one of my all-time favorites, Sentimental Fool. Both Ends Burning's a killer. Absolutely love that. Paul Thompson's drumming, I think it's pretty straight on, pretty straight drumming, but it's the like I don't know if it's congas or bongos or something.
Yeah, the
but
percussion's great, isn't it?
Brilliant. And some nice plucked string background from Eddie Jobson on this. Like just like little touches like that make it sound like an epic song. Again, one of my favorite songs. She Sells. It's a fun sounding song, changes style, changes groove, and the drumming, it's some great hi-hat and tom sound on that, and Whirlwind. I like that, and I like the I don't know if it's me just being hyper Geordie sensitive on one of his lines when he goes wild and then continues. Probably just me. But yeah, I love this album. I don't play it as much as I should, like, because when I was playing it again, I thought, oh God, this is great.
Yeah, I thought that when I played it.
Yeah, I would definitely say I don't play it as much as I should. Yeah, I think it's a very cohesive album. It works.
Yeah.
As really well. everything's in the right place.
Yeah. I've given it 4.5.
Okay, Peter, then what have you got at number 6?
Number 6, I've got Flesh and Blood. And yeah, this is the point where I make the confession that I do hit the skip button on In the Midnight Hour. It was, I think it was the first Roxy album I bought on CD. Like all the others I'd been buying on vinyl. And then by the time I got around to this one, it was like I got CD. And that song's so awful. I don't think I've ever listened to it all the way through.
I can understand it's terrible.
Pop the CD in, you know, by then remote controls were a thing, and it was just bing. So for me, and then we went to iTunes and just delete the thing from your playlist. So I'm not sure that I've listened to it all the way through In the Midnight Hour. It's just horrible. I think the only time I may have heard it all the way through would have been on the radio or something. And yeah, it's that. I think it is the only Roxy song that I find truly awful. But after that, I mean, hell, the album just goes from strength to strength. I mean, oh yeah, the complete stomp, same old scene. Now that's the new romantic soundtrack that I get. Other people would say, you know, trash and what have you. I just, no, same old scene for me. That's the one that will get me to a dance floor.
Yeah.
Flesh and Blood, not the strongest track on the album, but love it. My Only Love. Oh, perfect. And then, yeah, Over You, Rain, 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 No Strange Delight, fabulous. 8 Miles High is a really good cover. I would disagree that it's better than the original. But it's not cringe, as so many cover versions often are. It's a good cover version. I like it. But then, yeah, Running Wild, that just rips the feet from under me. You know, it's such a great way to close the album. You know, again, they always have a closer track. They do. They have the "We Are Coming Into Land, Ladies and Gentlemen" track, and that is it. And it's one of the most perfect. It's just, you know, I think if I did a compilation of Roxy for someone, that would be the last track on it, and it's just beautiful.
Interesting, because they have got, you're right, they've got loads of killer last tracks. I totally agree with you.
I mean, if it just hadn't put In the Midnight Hour on it, it would have been so I give it a 4. But without In the Midnight Hour, it's a 5.
Yeah. Well, it got 4.5 for me, and I would have given it 5 without the Midnight Hour. I have to say it. I can't believe how much the album's really grown on this. I'm genuinely shocked.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah, I think when I first heard it as well, I was still hoping to hear another version of In Every Dream Home. You know, and when I first listened to it, I'm like, oh God, this is so smooth. He's got the white jacket on. But actually, over the years, it just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They've really left you behind on this album. It is an adult.
Yeah, it's definitely grower. Well, that's interesting to hear. So yeah, we're down to the top 5 now then, and I'm going to be dead straight here. From now on, for me, it's 5 stars all the way for my top 5. At number 5, I've got Avalon. I think Bob Claremont's mix is brilliant. It's just tremendous. It could be described as yacht music, and it has been in the past. It's definitely got that Steely Dan sort of feel in some respects, not the jazz groove, but that sort of sound. And I just think it's a great album. More Than This is fabulous, as you mentioned earlier on. I've written The Space Between's almost Steely Dan sound. Avalon, great song. India is a lovely little instrumental. While My Heart's Still Beating, I've just written it's terrific. Ferry's wistful voice on it is superb. And there's a real sense of longing in it. The main thing, Alan Spencer's bass playing is just, again, top draw. He sadly died very young, unfortunately. Take a Chance on Me, one of my favorite Roxy songs. Dramatically long intro, but fabulous. Turn You On is good, but I actually think True to Life is a 5-star song. I think there's something about it that just gets us every time. I think it's magnificent. It's got a real amazing feel to it. I love the little sweeping chorus. There's just something about it I genuinely love. And then Tara or Tara, as Ian says, I don't know. I think you might be right. I might be wrong. Is a lovely little way to finish. I still hark on about the fact that I think Boys and Girls should have been a Roxy album. It should have been the last one of that.
It wouldn't have had Dave Sanborn on though.
Yeah, but it would have been the final trilogy of that style of album, if you like, because I don't think Manifesto fits into that. It's just some crossover on Manifesto. But anyway, getting back to Avalon, it's a super album. You've got Peter's right. You've got to be in the mood for it. You've really got to be in the mood. You're not going to put Roxy's Avalon on before you go out for a night out. It's just not going to happen. You might put it on when you get in from a night out, or a Sunday morning. But it's not you're not going to get it to get dressed up and energized, are you? But it is a lovely album, and it's one of them I'll maybe put on if I'm walking the dog, stick my headphones on, and it's a nice late night album. Lovely, fantastic album. So 5 stars. And at number 5 is Avalon. Ian, what have you got at number 5?
Number 5, that's where I've got Manifesto. I think this one's crept up a bit from where it was almost looking like it was like in reverse chronological order at first, but yeah, I think this is a really great album. As you mentioned, that I think it's the cover photo, the cover art is brilliant. Like I think it's a great cover. The plastic dummy party. There's a groove to this album, and as you mentioned, Gary Tibbs is on bass. Did you say there was 2 bass players on this?
Yeah, Alan Spenner's on a little bit as well, but I think it's mainly Gary Tibbs before he joined
the one thing in Roxy music, they never had a bass player who was kind of considered part of Roxy music.
I mean,
but
Gustafson's on about 3 albums, isn't he? Gustafson's on 3 albums. He should have really been part of the band.
But again, it's the last album with Paul Thompson, and he probably realised that this was the kind of turning point from here. But when we go and see him live, like he has to play Avalon and stuff like that. Like now,
yeah.
It's definitely got a mood feel to it, and I like how Manifesto sets out the mood for the album. I think it's quite an underrated album, and there are superb songs on it. It's got ups and downs, as you say. Trash, I haven't even mentioned it on me list here. It's just a bit light, It's all right. It's all right, but nothing. Manifesto, I love it. Again, it's got a brilliant intro. And it goes on, and it gets the groove going, and it's got some great disharmony from the sax, some low bleats from the saxophone, which adds to the atmosphere, and it builds and builds towards the end to that massive climax with a big clang right at the end, which I think is fantastic. And going back to Trash, it's got the weirdest intro where it's almost like a CD that's on
wobble,
being stuck, being scratched. Angel Eyes, I much prefer this version, although I did get it. I did like the disco-y Angel Eyes, which I guess was the single version, but I like this one, bass heavy and guitar heavy. It's more my kind of thing. Still Falls the Rain, superb. Stronger Through the Years, lovely. It's like a really disturbing feel to the song and atmosphere. And Ain't That So, I I really like that. It just get into a groove, but I kind of get lost in it and kind of just run with it. You know, it almost carries on from Manifesto's song. You know, it feels that kind of vibe to it, that kind of feel. So anyway, it's 4.5 stars.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Peter, how about you then? What have you got in number 5?
I've got Siren. As we've already said, we're now really getting into the very difficult to tell them apart. It's almost perfect. Notes. It definitely feels like the transition album between the art school and the late night Roxy. You know, it's the stepping stone, although it's quite a subtle stepping stone. Love is the Drug is, I know it's a lot of people's, you know, people really love that song, but it doesn't fully work for me. It doesn't hit me the way some of the other singles do. But I do think the album gets stronger from that point. End of the line, Sentimental Fool. By the time we get to Whirlwind, we're really, really getting to be a strong album. I think the first side closes out stronger than it starts, and then on the second side, well, really for me, it's pretty much almost perfection from start to finish. She Sells is such a great way to start second side of an album. Both Ends Burning. I didn't know that was a single until recently.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, really
no idea that was a single.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, odd.
I don't think it did anything, but it's a great song.
It didn't do anything.
I don't think so.
That's the public for you.
Is it like an effect on his voice on Both Ends Burning? It sounds great, the vocals on that one.
Yeah, almost like there's a touch of vocoder on it.
Yeah, there might be actually.
Something on there, yeah.
Could be. At this point, I'd just like to say I'm not a musician, so sometimes I wouldn't know a bass track from a lead guitar.
Right?
No, not quite that bad, but you know. And then, you know, it's again, they're doing the same Roxy trick of giving us another Coming Into Land track with Just Another Night. It's not quite the closer that say is For Your Pleasure. You know, it's not quite bringing you down that far, but it's a lovely way to close the album out. And I just think the whole album works really, really well together. It's one of those that sometimes you don't notice when tracks have changed, or I don't anyway. It's sort of, Kate Bush did a really wonderful thing with the second half of the Ariel album. She released it on iTunes as one track, Endless Sky of Honey, stitched it together. And I think this would be a really great thing to do with this album. Stitch the thing together as one track. And because it just does feel like it's really cohesive.
Yeah, a bit like the way the Beatles did on Abbey Road, sort of the second side.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. The Ariel album's actually excellent. That's for another day. Yeah.
I sometimes I think it's a really good thing to do. Stop people listening to sections of it. You know?
Yeah.
So I've given it 4.
Right.
Which now is harsh, but I don't know. I'm trying to get some definition between with what's coming. But
yeah.
I think 4 is excellent, isn't it?
4 is excellent. So that's fine.
Oh yeah, right. So it is. 4 is excellent. Yeah, then it's an excellent album.
Yeah, cool. Right then. Right, well, this is the surprise, Ian. My number 4, and this was really hard actually. These next, I always knew what number 1 was going to be, but number 2, 3, and 4, I could literally just throw them up in the air, and I'm not, and I wouldn't be sure. But my number 4 today, anyway, is the first Roxy Music album.
Oh, I thought you're not going to throw that in, are you?
So yeah, it's Roxy Music, which it's a 5-star album. It's an absolute classic. I love the glam cover with Carrie Ann Muller, and stylized by Anthony Price, who does all the albums. And what's great about this is that it was released on the 16th of June, 1972, which is exactly the same day as the release of Ziggy Stardust, which I think is so appropriate. It couldn't be more appropriate that Ziggy and the first Roxy album are released on the same day, because both artists, for me, go hand in hand. They're literally like that, you know. Most Big Bowie fans are Roxy fans. It's very rare to find one and not the other. You know, they just go together, hand in glove. And of course, at this time, Roxy would be support Bowie on a couple of gigs at the Rainbow, and he was a huge fan. He would advocate them for the rest of their career. Go and see them. To me, the album still sounds like the future. It still sounds like something I've never heard before. The album was initially released as 9 tracks because Virginia Plain, even though they'd written the song and they did it on a couple of Peel sessions, they didn't, for some bizarre reason, put it on the album. I don't know why. And they hadn't recorded it, so they couldn't put it on the album. And the Virginia Plain didn't get recorded for about another 6 weeks. And then it became a big hit single, a great hit single, obviously. Half the band at this point is from Newcastle, so I'm going to claim them as a Geordie band, or Geordie-ish band. Ferry had gone from Washington outskirts, obviously still more Sunderland than Newcastle, but we're still going to, still NE, so it's Newcastle. And he classes himself as Geordie. Paul Thompson from Jarrah. I had the good pleasure of meeting Paul Thompson recently, actually, after a gig, when I saw the band Saucer Full of Secrets doing the Gary Kemp band. And I was talking to Paul Thompson at the Metro, and he was lovely, really nice bloke. Paul Thompson, who Ferry had met through an advert and got on like a house on fire. And then Graham Simpson, who was not from Newcastle, but actually studied in Newcastle and was in Ferry's original band, the Gas Board. And he also joined Roxy, so half the band was from up here. We had Andy Mackay, Brian Eno, and Davey List was the original guitarist. It must go down as one of the most unlucky guitarists because he left the band. He'd written basically all the guitar stuff on the first album, and then Phil Manzanera came in when Davey List went, and he basically just did his licks. And you know,
hadn't he? I think he said in an interview he'd learned all the guitar licks. Was he was
roadieing for them on occasions. So yeah, so he learned all the licks, and so he just stood in, and that was it. He got the gig. So good for Phil Manzanera. That's clearly it's worked out great because he's a fantastic guitarist and a really nice bloke. So there you have it. The album is just magnificent. It's that mix of art, school, and rock and roll and kitsch. The opening party sound is just bizarre. You think, okay, what's this? And then Remake Remodel hits you, and you think, oh my god, that's one of the greatest opening tracks of all time. It's unbelievably powerful. It's just brilliant. And then the solo-y bits in it, you got like Ride of the Valkyries, Day Tripper in it. The number plates shouted out CPL 593H. It's just basically because Ferry fancied this girl, and he wrote a number plate down bizarrely, and then it's in all this. It's in the song. Lady Tron comes in, magnificent, real sense of panache at the beginning. You know that old boy sound at the beginning there, and you got me girl on the run round, got me all around town. It's just amazing. And then that mad ending, Thompson's flying on the drums like John Bonham style. It's just brilliant. The band are full nuts King Crimson style mode at this point. And then it changes track with If There Is Something, which has almost got a country feel to it. There's a John Peel version, which is about 11 or 12 minutes long. And if you get to hear that version, it's incredible. Virginia Plain should have been on it, so I'm going to just mention it because it should have been on there. And it's on the re-releases, of course. It's one of the great glam records. It's got that Pinball Wizard opening, hasn't it? That quiet bit, then the sort of big heavy bit in it. But it should have been on. We've got 2HB, sorry, to Humphrey Bogart. Here's Looking at You, Kid. Great film noir, stylish song. Matches the sound. The Bob with the Battle of Britain. Eno's effects in full overflow. So proggy as well. People forget Roxy could easily be deemed to be a prog band. The first two albums, for me, are prog. They are the prog glam, if you like. There's definitely that sort of style to them. Marvelous. And then two songs I put together are Chance Meeting and Sea Breezes. Superb, easy to play, funnily enough, because Ferry's not the greatest piano player in the world, but really easy to play, but lovely sound, and they've got this dreamlike quality to them. The lyrics are fabulous. It's just, you hear that, and it's like being taken into a different world. Chance Meeting sandwiched in the middle. It's like a rock and roll sort of tune, isn't it? And then at the end, you've got Bitters End, which bookends the album with that party from the beginning of Ladytron. Sorry, I forgot to mention Would You Believe as well. Sorry, I'm sorry, I was mentioning the sort of party thing there. And then you got Bitters End there with the bookend, and you got that bizarre, the lyric of bizarre coming in, which is fantastic. I just think, how clever is that? Bizarre. It's so clever. It shouldn't work, but it does. It's an incredible album. It's one of the greatest debuts of all time, in my opinion. It would probably make my top 10 debut albums. It's a 5-star classic. That's how good they are, that this comes in at number 4 for me. Ian, your number 4?
Sorry, I'm just trying to get over the shock that you've got that at number 4. Give us a minute. Right, okay. Yeah, but my the next one I at number 4, and I kept swapping places. Like I've said, I've got Country Life. It's another really great album. Yeah, it's really into full-on Roxy now. They've got their sound. Their albums now are superb from start to finish. There's a mix of styles as ever, including old rock and roll mixed in with like futuristic things. When I first heard that Greatest Hits LP, the thrill of it all, I just couldn't. It was a bit too much for us to take. I was like, what the hell is this? I love it now. But when I first heard it, I'm like, what's this like? And I couldn't, it's got no verse chorus structure, has it? It's like,
no, it's just all out attack.
Yes.
There's wrong with my ears, because I heard a pop song. I heard that as a stone cold pop song. And there's definitely something wrong with my ears. My friends have been saying, sorry, Ian.
No. Oh, hey, it's all right. It's different for everybody, but like it's full on like attack, isn't it? It's like, how much more sound could you blast out at the same time? And the answer is none more sound. It's just a complete wall of sound. But then with they do the quiet bit with the bit, you know, the sax bit, which is completely the opposite, and then it's back into the full-on attack again. So it's an amazing. Is that the opening track for this album? It is, isn't it? So a superb opening.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, is it?
6.5 minutes for an opening track.
Yeah. My only argument about that song is I think the mix is not the best on it. John Punter takes over from Chris Thomas, and I think the mix is a little bit muddy on it. I
don't know whether they were trying to go for that though, because there's so much going on there. It's just too much to actually listen to all the parts, because they're all thrown together, aren't they? Yeah,
Paul Thompson Drummond's great on it though. But sorry, go on.
No, I'll just pick some of the highlights. Bittersweet is just one of the very, very best songs. It gets me every time. It's the bass line when it starts up is just sublime, isn't it? You know, it's just so sorrowful, and you know something bad's happened with that. And it's a very personal, desperate, kind of betrayed song. And when, without any kind of warning, the first time you hear it, all of a sudden that German starts coming in, and it's full on, and it's like biting, kind of spitting, vitriol, and then it's back to the oboe, and the sorrow bit after that. I think it's a superb song. Another song, Triptych, which is like really strange, weird, kind of like a religious sort of song in like a baroque style.
Yeah, baroque. I didn't used to like it, but now I love it.
I do, yeah. And it's like, you know, it sounds authentic to that kind of style of music, you know. And it's such a great introduction for the song that follows that, which has no introduction. It just starts with "You, the hero." I mean, there is no introduction to it. It's again, that's full on. And Casanova is a fantastic song.
It just swaggers, doesn't it?
The more I talk about this album, the more I think, oh, it should be going up. Yeah, a higher ranking. It's like a sleazy dirt sound, great bass and keys. Again, John Gustafson on this, superb. And his articulation and rhythm of his lyrics, superb. He covered this on
it was on his solo album, yeah.
It never did much for me. That the cover of that is nothing like the original. Like Out of the Blue, I absolutely love that one. It goes kind of like, you know, it's all in like a minor key and downbeat, and then Out of the Blue, Love Came Rushing In, it changes to major and it's all upbeat, but then it goes back to minor again. And a nice funky bass, and drum breaks in the middle on this. Quite a funky song. All I Want Is You is an absolute classic, and probably, you know, it must be up there with most Roxy Music fans' favorite songs. All in all, a terrific album. You know, there's songs I've missed off there, but I've given it 4.5. Again, it's absolutely superb.
Okay, yeah. All right then, Fab. Yeah, Peter.
Well, I'm the same. Number 4, Country Life. And like yourself said, from now on, it's 5 stars for all of them from me. So, you know, semantics, you know, there's really nothing in it. But yeah, Country Life, it just, again, perfect from start to finish. Could have been one track. Everything blends beautifully. I don't really want to repeat everything that Ian said, but, you know, the thrill of it all, it is loud and noisy, but for me, it's just like the perfect pop song. And I was so surprised when one day I noticed that it's over 6 minutes long. Like, this is such a pop song to me. And I was just thinking about that with what Ian was saying about it being, you know, quite full on. I think when I first was listening to this album, I was also listening a lot to like The Birthday Party. So maybe in, you know, holding the two together, you know, the thrill of it all is a pop song compared to, you know, sitting by the birthday party, you know. So, yeah. So I don't really want to go through the whole thing again, but All I Want Is You. I mean, to me, it's the brother to Editions of You from for your pleasure. Completely perfect. Out of the blue, perfect. If it takes all night, nice way to close the first side. And then, yeah, I mean, with Bittersweet, Triptych, and Casanova, you know, again, should have been one track. Should just have been one track. Because Bittersweet leads in Triptych, the way it sort of changes, and you know, I think if you're not paying full attention, you would think you're in one track, or I do anyway. But as I said before, you know, people have commented that I do have a very weird way of hearing things. But then Prairie Rose, I mean, it's such a great closer, but it's almost the odd one out of the Roxy final tracks. It's the one that they leave you, this album leaves you on a explosion. Do you know, and Prairie Rose is such a stomp.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's not, you're not coming into land with that one. It's, you know, you're off into the distance and still going.
Presumably he just met Jerry Hall then, I don't know, but...
Yeah, he's been out with her for a little while, and obviously it's written about Jerry Hall, of course. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Although,
it is, I think it might be my favourite track on the album, Prairie Rose. I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard to say. My favourite track on this album is the one I'm listening to at the time. That's why I stitch the thing together, just make it one track, and then I haven't got into it.
Right, well,
because it is start to finish.
Yeah, well,
we haven't. Sorry. We should make a mention of the album cover because I forgot to mention it myself.
Yeah, well, I'm going to do that now because my number 3 is Country Life, and it was really close because literally 3 and 2 I could put them in the other way around and it really wouldn't bother us. But I've got my Country Life. It's literally a toss of a coin. The semi-clad models, they were banned in numerous countries on the front, and I think Canada has got a version where it was just literally, I think it was a picture of a tree, you know, a maple tree on the front, and that was it. There was another where the album would be given out in a brown paper bag, you know. I think there's another version where they've got, I'm not sure, is it just the models' heads or something? There are about 4 or 5 different versions, which I'll put on at the bottom so people will be able to see on the screen here as we're talking, different versions that I shall place on for the album covers for Country Life. It's just, you would never get away with that these days. Never.
Do you know the models? I think I was reading that it was, is it the guitarist out of Cannes?
Yes.
It was his girlfriend and his sister, which is a bit weird.
His sister?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
That's bizarre. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, wow, that's really weird. Never knew that. Never knew that at all. So it's, yeah, I mean, the album in itself was controversial because of the cover. I used to, bizarrely, when I had the shop here, I used to have that album cover as a jigsaw.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how, but I'd love to know where the jigsaw went.
I bet that's worth a fortune now.
Probably is. Imagine doing some of the missing pieces. But yeah, so the album came out in November 74. It's a 5-star album. It's brilliant. My only gripe, as I say, is the production of John Punter on the first song. I think Thrill of It All is a bit muddy, and it doesn't spoil it. I just like it would have been a little bit crisper. And I've just written Thompson's drumming out of this world. Eddie Jobson, great on it with the strings. I'm not going to repeat everything because it's all been said. 3 and 9, I've written, great song. It's got that lounge lizard feel to it. I've written down. All I Want Is You. Sorry?
Wikipedia. Funny enough, I was doing a bit of research for this. Wikipedia told me that 3 and 9 is what you used to pay to get into the cinema. It's like a...
All right, it's the old English money. Is that? I didn't know that.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that fits in with the
Oh,
Roxy
yeah.
concept, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. All I Want Is You, great. I've written terrific guitars and the Bonham like drums. We've mentioned it. If It Takes All Night, there's a barroom feel to it, doesn't it? You know, with that honky tonk piano and all that. It's like a swing along song and sing along as well at the same time. Great. Bittersweet, we've mentioned it. But I love the bass on it. It's just all that high note stuff's great. The German bit's fantastic. It's clearly the template for David Sylvian, you know, here and all that stuff. And Kevin Rowland as well, who was a big Roxy fan, and he openly admits he sort of took his voice off Ferry and Bowie and was influenced massively by those. Triptych, like you, I've mentioned the harpsichord, and I love the vibe and the whole feel. Casanova, I'm struggling to think of a song that swaggers more than Casanova. It says it says exactly what it is. You know, it just swaggers. It's absolutely magnificent. Real Good Times, dead catchy, and as Peter said before, Prairie Rose is a fantastic closer. It's a top draw album, and if this had been somebody's number one, I wouldn't have any gripes with it whatsoever. 5 stars all the way, and yeah, it's just marvelous, absolutely marvelous. That's my number 3. Ian,
Sorry, I was just gonna say, in terms of this era and these albums, personally, I feel like they're timeless. They're not really of any particular. Whereas possibly like Avalon and Flesh and Blood of that time, these ones are just like, if they were released tomorrow, you wouldn't bat an eyelid, would you? You know,
No.
and you'd think, oh, that sounds quite futuristic, or
still sounds like the future is the phrase, isn't it?
Future, a mix of future and old, isn't it? So
Such a happy album as well. You get the sense that he was very content and everything was in the right place.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Actually, it probably is the most uplifting of all the Roxy albums in that respect. Yeah. Ian, what have you got?
Except for the
Bittersweet
German.
Yeah. The Bittersweet Triptych, that little bit foray into darkness. The rest of it feels like, were they on MDMA?
Oh, every time I hear that song Bittersweet, it's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh. Right, next I've gone for Stranded. You know, I could have swapped places with Country Life, no problem at all. The first post Eno album, but ironically, it's his favorite Roxy Music album. This one I think was possibly more up than Country Life, but maybe that was to do with like comparing it with Bittersweet. I think it's an incredible sound mix on this, especially on Ferry's vocals. Because you know, on one song in particular, I've not heard many songs where the vocals have been recorded as well and mixed as well. You can, the one particular phrase is "through silken waters my gondola glides," you can actually hear his mouth moving and his tongue moving, and you can hear everything. It's so clear. It's a superb mix. The songs, I mean, Song for Europe is just incredible, powerful song. And Street Life's the opener, isn't it? And that's really accessible. I love it. That was that one and Love Is the Drug from Greatest Hits, that when I first got into them, were the ones that grabbed me straight away. Then Amazona, that to me is like Roxy music. It's got it stamped all over. It's, you know, loads of changes in tempo, loads of changes in style, and great drumming, great drum sound from the great Paul Thompson.
That's what I called him when I met him on the metro. You know, he just laughed. I goes, oh, it's the great Paul Thompson, and he just laughed, and he was very, very pleasant. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, you're all right. Like our keyboard player used to know him from years ago, like, and he's German, but he's got this great Geordie accent. So a lot of his mates were Geordies, like, so he's always ribbing us about that. But yeah, I'm a zoner. It's it's that Manzanera guitar sound. Man is the Roxy music sound. You know, his guitar playing. It's superb. It's all that screaming kind of. I can't describe it, but you know, later on, you were getting guitarists like Neil Hubbard, who had a more like soulful touch on it, but Roxy music without Manzanera just wouldn't be Roxy music.
Yeah. Great musician.
Yeah, and Mother of Pearl, oh, sublime. It's just a fantastic song. And especially when it gets to the end and they just keep repeating that, I wouldn't trade you for another girl, and just keep repeating. And then it goes, Sunset starts with the piano starts as they're still singing that, which I think is fantastic. A bit like Peter, it should be one track, you know.
Yeah, it almost is though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Sunset is just lovely. It's really poetic in style, and it's like just singing to the appreciation of the sun, and he's talking it like he's an old friend, and it's absolute poetry. I love it, and I think it's just a beautiful closing song with a bit of bowed bass, you know, some low bowed bass. I love it. Psalm, I've always found that a bit of a strange one. Like a gospel. It's like a gospel song. I never quite work out, you know, was he what was he thinking when he wrote that? So I don't know if any of you know. I quite like it, but it's not my favorite on the album. But anyway, 4.5 stars, another absolute classic.
Okay, Peter, what have you got at number 3?
I have also got Stranded. Again, you know, it's another completely perfect album that could be stitched together as one track again. The only thing for me here is that I've put it at number 3 above Country Life was because of Song for Europe. That's the last song I want to hear. You know, like that's the song to drown to, you know. And it is that line, through silken waters my gondola glides, you know. Like, I've been to Venice a couple of times, and that this whole album has to be played in Venice, you know, because of that one line and that whole song that builds to that point. It's just, I love every track on this album, but Song for Europe is an obsession, an almost unhealthy obsession. Like, yeah, I definitely want that Song for Europe playing when I gasp my last. It's so beautiful. And, you know, there's not much more I can say about the individual tracks that Ian hasn't really said. You know, it's just absolutely bloody perfect. In some ways, again, Street Life, the single, is possibly the most disposable track on it. Like, if that was switched out for an other single, you know, the album would still survive for me. But yeah, it's just, again, they must have been pretty happy when they were recording this. They're certainly working as a great unit. Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible 5 stars for me album.
Yeah. Terrific. Yeah, great choice. Great choice, actually. Well, we're into number two
Also,
territory now. And my number two is For Your Pleasure. Released March 73. Chris Thomas is now on production. It's got the androgynous Amanda Lear on the front cover with a puma. She was Ferry's girlfriend for a while, and boys and Darley's, and you know, yeah. It's a fantastic album cover. I absolutely love the album cover. I was going to wear me For Your Pleasure t-shirt, but it doesn't work against the background we're recording, so I've left it. What a great cover that is, and the inside, the gatefold is just great. It's an incredible album. It's an incredible album. As I've already said, 5 stars all the way. The Strand is an epic opener. It's as good an opener as you're ever going to get. It's a proper statement of intent. Tired of the tango, fed up with fandango. What a line, man! It's just brilliant. The opening track, it's camp, it's majestic, it's got, you know, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely.
It starts off just lyrics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's no intro.
His new sensation, fabulous creation. It's just brilliant. I mean, what can you say about the Strand? If you don't like that as an opener, just give up.
yeah.
Beauty Queen, moody, experimental, so a real contrast in tone, all of a sudden a massive switch for that keyboard opener. It's Steve Jones at the Sex Pistols. It's his ringtone. It's a bizarre ringtone to have. But yeah, he's a big Roxy fan. Obviously a great musician, but it's Beauty Queen's fantastic. It's one of them songs when I first heard it, because I knew the Strand, and when I first put it on, Beauty Queen's the first time I go, all right, that's weird, that's different, that's great. And then Strictly Confidential comes on, and it's even more weird. It's really otherworldly. Andy McKay's oboe is fantastic. It really sets the mood. Another incredible song, in my opinion. And then we have, for me, the sister song of the Strand's Editions of You. They're very structurally quite similar in some respects. The solo is magnificent on it. I love the effects on it and what Eno's doing on it. It's just great. Absolutely great. It really moves. It's like a party record almost. You know, the woo bit in it is superb. You know, everyone sings it live. It's just dead catchy. You can see the whole crowd go woo. It's one of those things. And then we get into In Every Dream Home a Heartache. Like Modern Life, but also bizarrely, it's the hook when it gets you, and you realize he's singing about an inflatable doll as well, and you think, wow, this is really turned the corner. This has gone really weird. And then of course, like the previous song, there's that big epic moment when everybody sings along. But you blow my mind. But you blow my mind, and everyone sings it, and then the guitar solo comes in, and on the album it fades out as well and comes back. It's so brilliant. It's unbelievable. The mood set with it, with Ferry's voice and the little keyboard and the little sound. It's an incredible tune. And then we mentioned Khan earlier on. Well, side two's only got 3 tracks, and The Bogus Man could easily be a Khan song in terms of the beat. Could have been on Tego Mago, for example. It's got that, you know, that laid down solid beat all the way through. It's really experimental. It's weird. It's superb. I know some people don't get it, actually. It's a song about a stalker, I think, as well. I was talking to my mate Siren. He's not a big fan of The Bogus Man or Grey Lagoons, but I think Bogus Man is just great. I think it's a fantastic song, and I love Ferry's repetitive voice on it. The thing that he does with his voice, I think is just great. Grey Lagoons is a great song, but it's probably, for me, the weakest track on the album. It could have been on the first album. I mean, I think most of these tracks were written at the same time, so any of these could have been on any order of the albums. It's a really great song, though. Not going to disparage it. It's a super song. And then the ending is, for me, the strongest ending of any of the Roxy Music albums. Paul Thompson's drumming is just outstanding on this, on For Your Pleasure. It's a really fantastic mood. It's really experimental. The drumming it's just sensational. And it's at the end, it's got Judi Dench coming on at the end. we don't ask why.
Oh, is that her?
You listen to it, you go, oh, who's that? Who's that? Yeah, it's enunciated really, really well, and it's like, wow, this is so clever. It's if I could give it 6 or 7 stars, I would. I think it's just an incredible album. It's one of my favorite ever albums. Yet, such is the strength of the catalog, it comes in at number 2 for me. Okay, Ian, what have you got at number 2?
Number 2, I've gone for the first album, Roxy Music. When I first heard this album, I was in shock. I couldn't quite get my head around the difference in style from Ferry's laid back lounge sound to this. But I grew to love it, to be, if not my favorite album, my second favorite album. It's absolutely mad and futuristic, with a blend of the old-fashioned rock and roll. Sound effects from helped by Brian Eno or brilliant. I mean, especially at the end of Remake Remodel, where it's just crazy. I think when they were playing a lot of these songs live, they were kind of looking at each other thinking, well, this is not what I'm playing, but Eno was just messing up with every, What was it that he actually, what was the name of the electronics unit?
It's a V something, isn't it? It was that little unit thing you twiddle around with.
It's quite funny when you see some like old grey whistle test and he's just twisting knobs. And Ladytron, that's one of my favourites. Ferry's vocal style and pronunciation and playful style. The keyboards sound superb, and again, the drums are amazing on it. Leading into If There Is Something, which again, it's just so weird. The lyrics are just mad. And then when he gets the desperate bit, like, I would do anything for you. I would climb mountains. He's so desperate for this woman. He'll do anything, even if it's like climbing mountains or growing potatoes by the score, sitting in the garden. It's like from one extreme to the other. It's crazy. 2HB. Now, I must be the dumbest person alive for I was listening to this for, I don't know, about a year, and then all of a sudden it's, oh my God, that's a theme tune from Casablanca. Oh my God, 2HB to Humphrey Bogart. Here's looking at you, kid. How it was like a eureka moment for me. But I was just like, how could I be so stupid to not to be listening it and not kind of tie the two together? So anyway, that aside, I love it. It's got that old-fashioned crooner sort of feel to it. The Bob, it's a true air raid classic. And I think like when they played this live, they had proper air raid sirens, but like in the studio, they were trying to get something as close to an air raid sound, and it works. But I think live, it's even better with the actual air raid sirens. Chance Meeting, the vocals on it are very awkward, like probably like the situation of meeting a past love, and it's got this kind of not unhinged sound to it, but very kind of weird sound, like undercurrent to it. Whereas going into a song like Sea Breezes, you spoke about that before. I think that's his very singing style it's superb. It kind of takes you to a different plane. You're kind of hearing the sea in the background. I don't know what his singing style. I may actually prefer what he used on Let's Stick Together, when he covered that. Because
he did a different version, didn't he?
I really like his singing style on that. But anyway, that's just neither here nor there. But like this album is like, hello, we are Roxy Music, and this is what we sound like. It's just crazy. And I give it 5 stars.
Well, John Peel famously said, and did this on another show, he said that the only 2 original bands he ever had on his show, one was the Smiths and the other one was Roxy Music. He said they're the only 2 bands he didn't know where they came from. He said they clearly weren't blues influenced, or he just didn't know where they came from. Everywhere else he could link back to other bands, but he didn't know where Roxy came from. They just came out with the blue. So yeah, great choice. Peter, what have you got into number 2?
Number 2, I following Ian again. It's the first album. I saw again whilst researching this on Wikipedia, somebody had quoted Paul Gambaccini as saying it was either above us, beneath us, or on another plane altogether. And it's like, yeah, this feels like somebody's walked in with a slab of cement and just dropped it on your desk and like, have that. What the? It's just, even when I was listening to the birthday party, this was still sounded discordant, and that's a pretty tough thing to do. I can hear the Velvet Underground in this album. I can hear that Velvet Underground and Nico, the John Cale. That Brian Eno was hopped up on the early Cale. I think there were drugs. There must have been drugs. I can't say for sure, but I think there must have been something going on, because it comes screaming out the gate with remake, remodel. Just one of the strangest things I've ever heard. Slight calm down with Ladytron. I think it does. After remake, remodel, it's still a weird little tune, but it's not maybe as full on. If there is something, again, it's just dense, very dense. This isn't an album you're going to get on the first listen. I think the first time I heard it, I was like, okay, it's got a lot of, I'm hearing ingredients that I like, but I'm not yet getting the full flavour. This is going to take me some time. And it really did. It took me a good few years. And it took me a lot longer, Ian, to work out the 2 HB was to Humphrey. I mean, because by the time you get to that song, because it's like the easy listening track, really, on that album. It is on that
description,
album,
actually.
It is their version of a bloody easy listening track. Certainly there. After Remake, Remodel, Ladytron, and Is There Something, you're like it quite going around. So I think if they put another track in there, it would have been like, oh, enough already. But to actually put that in, almost like what is it the French do? Sorbet, between courses, it's almost like soothing your ears. Years ago, I used to go and see a band called The Wedding Present a lot. They used to play really loud noise and what have you. And when they left the stage, they put Patsy Cline on. Crazy by Patsy Cline. And it was just like so perfect. It was, again, like palate cleanser thing. And that kind of feels like what 2HB is for me. Maybe why I didn't pay that much attention to it and didn't make the Bogart connection until, for a while. But then, when you get onto the second side, it's fairly unremitting, isn't it? It's, Battle of Britain. But I think, for me, Battle of Britain and Chance Meeting, they feel like a pair of songs. Like the Chance Meeting, for me, is a story about somebody that two people that maybe were connected during the previous song. I can't say why. It's a feeling rather than something I can dissect. But it just they just connect to me. Whereas I know Sid, didn't you say that you thought that chance meeting leads you into Would You Believe?
Yeah, yeah, I do. It's like sort of sandwiched in between, isn't it? You know, and you got Sea Breezes. It's I always feel like Sea Breezes and chance meeting go together. And so it's
Right.
odd. It's odd. It's odd how you sort of, we all look at it differently, don't we? You know.
I think this is why it is important the way they put these things together. It's why I find people that put things on shuffle. I know people don't really do that anymore, but you know, you used to have the iPod, people would put it on shuffle, be like, that's so offensive. Which, you know, maybe is slightly neurotic, but you know. I think Sea Breezes, well, that's just pretty much Brian Eno inventing ambient music, isn't it? Really? Is it not really? Just I sound, to me, it's like, yeah. So they do glam. It's art rock, it's ambient, and it's still abstract. Still today, it's still like, you know, as we've already said, someone could release this album today and you'd be like, wow, that's different. It still sounds different, like 50 years on.
Yeah,
mental.
It is.
And it's years this year, isn't it?
It's just gone. And I would also argue that as an album, it's more radical than even Nevermind the Bollocks, which comes out 5 years later. I think this is a more radical album, in my opinion. I think this
that was the other thing I was going to say. I used to play music in the office years ago when we went to an office. I used to play music, and I'd get away with playing Killing Joke or the Pistols or something like that, and fine. Put that on, and people are like, "Oh, what's this noise?" I'm like, "It's Roxy music," and they're like, "No, it's yeah, it is. Hang on," and then they, get to Virginia Plain, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, it's Roxy music. It's just not the Roxy you know."
Yeah, yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Yeah, it's bizarre. Right, great choice though. Well, my number one is the one that's slightly different to the pair of you. So we're not going to have a hat trick of the same album. My number one is Stranded, released in November '73. So they released 2 albums in the same year. I mean, how do you release For Your Pleasure and Stranded in the same year and have the quality to be that brilliant? I mean, I think there's only Bowie who at the time was that good, and Kate Bush a few years later. To release 2 albums in 1 year of this quality is just unbelievable. And Iggy as well, I should have mentioned, but it's just crazy. I mean, it's Eno's gone, as Ian said. This is Eno's favorite album, which is really ironic. Eddie Jobson's joined, John Gustafson's on bass. It's just brilliant. Street Life, Dead Catch You Up. Now we've done all this before. Just like you though, I love the laid back feel of it. I love the strings, and then that odd middle section, which really juxtaposes that calm opening feel. So this album is a real album of juxtapositions, I think. This is why I love it so much. Amazona, brilliant. Psalm, I love the piano and the organ and Ferries and Passions singing. It's 8 minutes, but it's just brilliant. I love the little drums on it. And then Serenade with that beautiful voice. The vocally, the vocals, like delayed opening. It takes a while. It's and again another juxtaposition middle. It's just superb. It really is an incredible song. And then Peter said everything about Song for Europe. And I've just written here, if you look up the word epic in a dictionary, it's got the words Song for Europe written next to it. It's just great. Ian's right about the sax solo and live. It's even better, if there can be such a way of saying it. And then Mother of Pearl, a proper song of 2 parts. The hectic opener. It's almost like they're about to fall off a cliff. It's so ram-packed with lyrics, with music. And then all of a sudden it goes zoom, it just stops, and then that amazing groove comes on, and it's sensational. And as you were saying before there, I love that singing at the end, and then it drifts into sunset. with that magnificent vocals and then that fantastic tune at the end. It's a perfect album from start to finish. It was always going to be my winner. If I had to pick my top 10 favorite ever albums, and obviously they would change on a regular basis, but I think Stranded would be in it. Actually, I know it would be. It's just a sublime album, and it's really hard to choose between those 4 albums really that they've got, and you think, wow, this could go really in any order. But for me, I've gone with Stranded because I just think it's exceptional, an exceptional album. Ferry's voice is at its peak, the band are in full motion, and everything about it is brilliant. And also, a quick mention with Chris Thomas's production again is breathtakingly good. It's so well produced. It sounds immense, absolutely immense. But everything else has been said before, so I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, that's my number 1, Stranded. Ian?
Mine obviously is For Your Pleasure. And this album, I mean, you've mentioned the cover art before, superb cover art. Even if you can't quite make out the puma or panther or wherever it is, I think some editions you can actually see it more than others. But and then you've got Ferry in the corner with these chauffeurs smiling away, chauffeur's outfit on. This is the album where I kind of get lost in the groove on a lot of these extended songs, like The Bogus Man, and it just takes you into another, and you just kind of drift off with the music, which is one thing why I like the songs being so long. Production, as you say, this sounds superb, crisp. Quite a contrast to a lot of the first album, where I think that was purposefully made to sound like that. Well, this is like,
it's quite muddy, isn't it? The first album, it's been remixed since, and Steve Wilson's mix is brilliant of it. Actually, if you get the chance to listen to it, why they've not re-released that version, I don't know. But anyway, go on. Sorry.
But no. There's a lot of dark, interesting songs, and when you again, when you compare this Roxy music to like Avalon, it just doesn't compare, However, Avalon's a brilliant album, for other reasons. But this, there's lots of dark, interesting, mad situations, like you've already mentioned with Dream Home Heartache, which is a mammoth of a song. And you can hear it on like adverts. I heard it on a few months ago. There was like a perfume advert or something that used it, like an excerpt of this song, and came in with a screaming guitar. It's as you say, it's quite you don't know where it's taking you the first time, and then it gets weirder and weirder and darker. And then it becomes unhinged by the end, and it's I don't know. It's just one of my favorite. I mean, list all the tracks on this album, and they're all one of my favorite Roxy Music songs. I don't want to go over the ground that we've already covered, but The Bogus Man, in much the same as Every Dream Home or Heartache, it takes you off. It's menacing. It's got like a weird spooky kind of feel to it, but it's got a groove to it, and you just get lost in it. Songs like Beauty Queen just sit so well in the album order. I think each song leads into the next, and it's just seamless. Again, Peter, it could be one song all the way through. Going into the final song, For Your Pleasure, and when you hear this song live and you hear the drum intro, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, don't you? You know what's coming, and the crowd goes mad on this when they start playing this. And it's all like stark, and it's almost like the tune's lost in space and time. You know, it's just the soundscape is just formidable. You know, you just get lost in it. And when they're playing this live, it's just each member of the band bows off one by one, you know, and they get their applause till it's only Paul Thompson, I think, left drumming at the end, and then he packs in and walks off, and then there's all the effects going on, like the Eno effects that end the gig, and I don't think there's a better closing song to any gig than when you go and see Roxy Music and the finish on this song. I just think it's absolutely fantastic album, 5 stars. And I didn't have any hesitation in this album being my number one. It's just that bit better, but I mean the rest of the also rounds are so close to it.
It's a perfect gig ending song, as you were saying, though. You're dead right about that. Like, yeah, great. It's Ferry's favourite Roxy album as well, isn't it? So,
oh, is it?
Yeah. Right, Peter, you're number one then, obviously.
Once again, for your pleasure. I really do think we might not be in the best people to do this. Obviously, we're clear. Maybe are we too close to the subject? You know, we love it that much that there's so little in these the 5 albums.
What's interesting, I'll give you a comparison. There's an American show that does the same thing, and they've got one person had For Your Pleasure in at number 8. I almost copy at the time, and they had the Roxy first three albums really low, and they went the other way around, and I was freaked out by that. I couldn't get my head around it. They couldn't understand or get the head around this sort of experimental British art rock thing. And it might be a British thing. It might be a British thing or a European thing that they don't get in America. I don't know. I was genuinely shocked, absolutely shocked by the whole thing. But
then I guess you think about the American bands that have been embraced here and not over there, like Velvet Underground and Ramones and stuff.
Yeah,
you know, we got them for the Americans did, so maybe that is. But it's nice to have other opinions. But for me, like, yeah, this was going in at the top slot because, you know, if Country Life is the kind of happy-ish or content, shall we say, Roxy album, this is the uncomfortable. This is discomfort to me. You know, from the cover, I think that the Panther, is it Panther, that you can't quite make out. You know, you don't notice it at first, but it's because it's all so black. I think that sums up the album. I mean, there's so much. It's subtle. The cover is dark and subtle, and the contents are dark and subtle, or sometimes unsubtle. I was surprised that Do the Strand, it was like the only single off it. To me, Do the Strand isn't a single. Editions of You would have been single, but, you know, not really being a single sort of person. Do the Strand is a fantastic way to start the album. It is a brilliant, perfect starter. The lyric Rhododendron is a nice flower. Laugh. Always made me laugh. Somebody once told me that there's a rhododendron. You know how they name flowers? There is one called Brian Ferry. I haven't checked that I haven't checked the veracity of that statement, so it might not be true. But maybe the reason I didn't check it is because I want it to be true. You know, that there's a rhododendron called Brian Ferry.
I think it's bizarre. That, like, wow,
it's magnificent. Beauty Queen, Strictly Confidential, you know, all what can I say that hasn't already been said? Magnificent, beautiful, draw you right in. It's tension on tension on tension for me, and then into the kind of, there's anger in Editions of You. You know, the lyrics, you know, is another edition of you. You know, it's like, who am I going to wake up to today? This isn't a happy album. This is not, there's real anger, you know, and he's unhappy. And it's unsettling, you know, and then you get to the ultimate in unsettling tracks ever written. You know, Susie and the Banshees ain't going to match this. You know, The Cure at their darkest, they're not going to match this. You know, In Every Dream Home a Heartache, which a lot of goth bands have covered very, very badly.
I think you're right. I think Roxy are one of them bands who massively influenced like the post-punk movement, or the punk movement as well, of course, wasn't they, along with Bowie, you know? They were the two big artists who escaped the whole Year Zero thing. They're the two artists, maybe The Who as well. They're the artists who were exempt from being slaughtered and criticised to death. Everybody else, it was like Year Zero. But yeah, you're right. Go on, sorry, Peter, I'll interrupt there.
Yeah, I mean, so many of them say that like they met at Roxy gigs, don't they? You so often hear that in punk documentaries. Oh, we met at a Roxy gig. But yeah, to me, it just culminates in Every Dream Home a Heartache. Which, although we know it's about a blow-up doll, it's about so much more. It's just about being a really creepy kind of unpleasant individual, used incredibly well in Mindhunter. Did you see the TV show Mindhunter about the FBI, the serial killer unit? Yeah, in the second season of that, it opens with Dennis Rader, a serial killer. He's creeping through a house, and over the top is In Every Dream Home a Heartache. And I was obsessed with the TV show. I was
You can see why it would be used though, can't you? A bit like Heart's Filthy Lesson used on the end of Seven. You can see exactly why it would be used.
So when that aired, because I was really waiting for the second season from that. I'm not that much of a TV fiend, but Mindhunter was one thing that drew me in. And yeah, when the second season came round and it started with that, I was like, oh yes, we're off. So, you know, it is, you know, and if I'm not going to hear Song for Europe as I gasp my last, then I want to hear In Every Dream Home a Heartache. Although, I don't know, it's maybe not, it's not, it doesn't have, there's no beauty. It's deeply unpleasant, unsettling song. And then again, this might be a criminal thing to say, but this album works better away from vinyl because you don't have to flip it over to go into the Bogus Man. You can continue the horror of In Every Dream. You know, you can stick with that discomfort. You know, if you're in your chair listening to it and you're having an anxiety attack, you don't have to break that mood. Get up and flip the vinyl, because you're going straight into the Bogus Man, which is another deeply unpleasant, unsettling song, and tribute to the cover of the album. You know, it's dark as hell. It's, you know, I don't think it's as beautiful a listen as In Every Dream Home. You know, it's certainly not like a sing-alongy, if you could say such a thing. But it is so sinister. And then for me, Grey Lagoons, it's almost like inhaling after someone's been strangling you. You know, it does, because it is claustrophobic. You are like in this, through the whole of Dream Home and the Bogus Man. It's a lot. You know, for anybody that's listening to this and thinking, right, I need to check this album, be warned. You're going into claustrophobia, or you're putting a bag over your head and tying a knot through this next, you know, and that adds up to 15 minutes there of In Every Dream Home and Bogus Man. You've got a quarter of an hour of some intense claustrophobia coming up, and then you're going to get Grey Lagoons. and now you can breathe again. And then, in the nicest way possible, they bring the ship into port with "For Your Pleasure," which is, you know, kind of. I think by that point, everybody, if you're not cooked, if that at that point, if you're not done in and finished, then I don't know what is gonna do it for you. If you're not fully fucking satiated music at that point, then you're not wrung out. Then it's just absolute perfection.
No, it is. It's a great album. And what's interesting, you were talking about single before, but Pajama Armor was released a month before the album to promote the single, although it doesn't make the album.
Odd.
Which is odd.
It wouldn't have fit, would it?
No, it wouldn't have fit on. You could have replaced Grey Lagoons in it, but it would have took, as Peter said, it would have took that moment out of it. So yeah, it doesn't fit. Although bizarrely, it might have fitted on Stranded.
Yes, more likely to have fitted on Stranded. I mean, it's certainly not. Pajama Rum is not the same session. Surely.
No, it's no. I don't know. I haven't checked, but I know it was recorded to promote the album. So it's just bizarre, isn't it? It's odd. It's odd. I think that maybe slightly later on as well.
Unless they delivered the album to the record company, and the record company had a fit. Like,
what we're going to release?
Studio, give us Virginia Plain Mark II. Give us something.
Yeah.
But I still would say the record company were brave for releasing it.
Oh,
because
mega.
It's not commercial. It's certainly not, Avalon or Flesh and Blood, which it's not pop hit. There's no pop music there at all.
No, there's not, because if you think of 73, the big acts of 73, you had Slade with like the biggest band around at the time. And of course, you had like Gary Glitter. We're allowed to see him, his name. We had like Bowie was, of course, the end of T-Rex, really, and all of the sort of glam scene. And Roxy don't really fit. They do in the looks, but they don't musically fit into that sort of category, So yeah, interesting, really interesting. Right, folks, we'll come to the end of the show there. Really fascinating choices. It would be interesting to hear what your thoughts are, and all very different there at times. Some interesting stories. As I say, we're huge Roxy fans. We've seen them a number of times. They're just one of the great bands. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Subscribe and like the channel, and give us your comments. Until the next time, we'll see you later on. Take care and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay.